Hello and welcome to another edition of Diplomatic Channel. I'm Amarachi Uvani. This week on the program, we're reviewing 1 year of President Bola Tinubu's tenure in office. And a lot has happened, and I have two guests, former Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Joe Keshi, and former Nigerian Ambassador to Burundi, Ambassador Elijah Onyaba, joining me on the program. We'll be getting right into the conversations after a quick check and other discussions in diplomatic circles.
The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Maitama Toga, has described the bilateral engagement to bolster trade between Nigeria and Benin Republic as a historical milestone and the making of a major hub for trade. He was speaking at a bilateral meeting at the Segbana Customs Border Post in Benin Republic, where he had led a strong Nigerian delegation. According to the Foreign Minister, the meeting was key to operationalizing the Kebbi-Shegbama border, which is imperative in showcasing President Bola Tinubu's commitment to enhancing economic ties between the two countries, with a view to promoting economic growth and prosperity, in line with the 8-point agenda of the government. The bilateral meeting agreed to set up a project implementation working group within a short, medium, and long-term framework through the resuscitation of the Nigeria-Benin Joint Commission, last held in a meeting in Cotonou back in 2014. The minister also called attention of the Beninois government to ongoing plans to repatriate 700 Nigerians living in the Segbana area. He stressed the need for harmonious relations at common borders. The chairman of the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, Mrs. Abike Dabri-Arewa, has congratulated Mrs. Abigail Marshall Katung as she takes over as the Lord Mayor of Leeds in the UK. She also congratulated the Mayor of Southwark, Mayor Michael Situ, who completed his tenure and handed over to Lord Mayor Councillor Naima Ali. Mrs. Dabri-Arewa says Katung's remarkable achievement is not only a testament to her dedication, leadership, and hard work, but a source of immense pride for Nigerians in diaspora. She wished her a successful tenure as mayor. She also separately hailed Mayor Michael Situ for a successful tenure at Southwark as he handed over to Councillor Naima Ali, a British Somalian.
Joining us now to discuss 1 year in office of the Tinubu administration are former Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Joe Keshi. Ambassador Keshi has 35 years of service at the ministry under his belt, and since his departure, has been contributing to discussions on national and international issues. He is also currently president of the Retired Carrier Ambassadors of Nigeria, ARCAN. Ambassador Keshi, welcome to Diplomatic Channel.
Thank you. Good evening, and thanks for having me.
We also have joining us the most recent former Nigerian ambassador to Burundi. His first posting as a diplomat, we're hoping for many more. He is also a contributor to national and international issues. Ambassador Elijah Onyaba, thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much, and it's great being here.
Gentlemen, I'm really excited about having both of you. We have, the older generation. We also have a newer generation of diplomats to look at this issue. Ambassador Keshi will be speaking from hindsight, and then you, Ambassador Onyaba, you will speak from your own perspective, because you at least experienced a few months of the recent administration before you were recalled back in October, as well as other ambassadors, in Nigeria, other Nigerian ambassadors who were recalled, who have yet to receive new postings. I want to begin with a very simple question for both of you. What you can list as achievements by this president internationally since he entered into office on May 29th, 2023. Ambassador Keshi, will begin with you.
Thank you, and that's a very good question. But let me start with by noting that when you have a new administration and they lay out the roadmap, that roadmap enables you, like what we are doing now, to review if they have achieved anything, given what they have said in that roadmap. With regard to the issue of foreign policy, I think some credit goes to the current minister. In fact, I think there are two in the Tinubu's administration that when they came to office, they took time to actually enunciate, should I say, the principles or the ideas that will guide their activities while in office. One was the governor of the central bank, for example, who made it clear that he was moving away from Emefiele's development focus and returning back to monetary issues and the conservative nature of the central bank. And you had the foreign minister who had stated from day one when he got to office that he would be guided by what he called the 4Ds, if I remember very clearly. And that's development, demography, diaspora, and one other one I'm trying to remember now. The four of them. And so when you begin to take each and every one of these, particularly development, I'd like to posit that the various efforts they've made, to open up the country and then to attract investment is probably a plus, to their credit. But, when you listen to others from outside the country, particularly the recent statement made by the CEO of Total Energy in Kigali recently, you begin to get some feeling that we still need to do a lot more in terms of, the issue of development, which is essentially economic diplomacy, which is what they have been engaged with. There have been a lot of conference tours, official trips, and so on. And as you pointed out in our discussion, there have been commitments that have not been actualized. And so when you see 6 billion being transferred to another country simply because of the domestic issues, you begin to see that a lot more needs to be done at the domestic level because there's a nexus between domestic environment and foreign policy. And so if investors are making commitments, but they're also looking at what you are doing in terms of security, they are looking at what you are doing in terms of, talents, as the gentleman said, the capability, the ability to absorb some of these things, the educational system and all these other things that will enable you project yourself properly, then there's still a lot to be done at the domestic level. And as was noted when we were discussing also, more than 11 months ago or thereabout, ambassadors were recalled, and that has left most of the missions practically empty. But for me, that's not really the issue. The issue is that because I think they are trying to sort out the issue of politicians who will be ambassadors, they are invariably punishing the younger elements, younger officers in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs who have been eminently qualified for years to be ambassadors, but no appointment has been made. And as long as our missions remain, vacant without ambassador, there's still a problem. So on a balance sheet, it's just 1 year. We could give them some credit that they've try to reach out to the outside world. They try to tell the outside world that they're trying to make the environment conducive. But in my view, there's still a lot more to be done for the rest of the world to really take us seriously. And we also need to understand where we are today. A number of African countries are actually projecting leadership far more than Nigeria is doing. And we have to take that into consideration in whatever we do in the next 1 year.
Ambassador Nyagba, you're the most recent ambassador of Nigeria to a foreign country that we can speak to. Do you feel slighted in any way the fact that there hasn't been a reappointment of ambassadors and you're still freshly out? Well, we're hoping you will be reappointed, but I'm sure that your views are slightly different from Ambassador Keshi.
Thank you very much, Amarachi. Here is the issue for me, and I think it's very important for us to have a very good assessment of the president's first 365 days in office as far as foreign policy concerned. And I'd like to bring us back to his documents, the Renewed Hope documents while he was campaigning. His foreign policy was on fronts, and I'd like to just talk about them. He said that first is to ensure that Nigeria is protected against every and any form of external aggression. And the second was that his foreign policy was going to be based on the fact that he will try to get the best outcome for Nigeria in every international negotiation. And the last was to improve Nigeria's standing and to improve Nigeria's dignity amongst the Committee of Nations. I think it was, strategy towards driving these three objectives that gave rise to the 4D agenda that the foreign minister is actually advancing at this point in time. And I honestly do agree that a lot of work has been done. There's no taking away the fact that the president has been the chief marketer of Nigeria in most of his shuttle diplomacy. Everywhere he goes, he takes responsibility on dealing with economic issues and is actually at the forefront of trying to drive foreign direct investment to come into the country. So on that front, the president, a lot of credit must actually go to the president. And even at the local front, I also know that some of the things we can say that the government have also achieved is that I think there's a discussion between the executive and the National Assembly to try to bring in reforms into our foreign policy. And to that extent, a lot of work is going on at the moment. And I honestly, in my personal assessment, believe that the foreign ministry is one of the bright spots. The government have had a rocky start on all fronts, given the reforms that are going on in the country, given the realities that we all know about. But I honestly believe that the foreign ministry has actually been one of the bright spots in this administration. And it goes to show how much work that has gone into, the work. It goes to show how much energy that the minister has actually expended. Yes, there is this issue of reappointment or appointment of ambassadors, yes. But even in the absence of that, a lot of work is going on. The president has moved quite around a bit. I think at the last count, there's a total of about $30 billion in terms of commitments for investments into the country. Yes, there will be questions as to how much of them has been actualized, but it starts from the commitment. And I believe that a lot of credit has to go there. But at the same time, it's always a balanced view. Because if there is anything I understand about this administration, the president is actually a president that is open to criticism. The president is a president that is open to suggestions here and there. You remember recently the issue of cyber security levy, which obviously came heavily on Nigerians. And then by the time these issues were met with resistance here and there, you could see that there was a pullback on the part of the presidency to say that this has to be on hold. So yes, there are achievements, but a lot of work, without a doubt, still needs to be done because I believe that these commitments we're talking about, you must also have envoys, representatives of the president outside there to go ahead and continue to push following up on the materialization of these investments, because it won't end at signing MOUs, it won't end at commitments. There has to be clear plan, and clear plan has to, this plan has to be driven by, the foreign ministry through the ambassadors that are representing the president. So that's on the balance of it, yes, there is a lot of credit, but I also believe that there is still a lot to be done on the foreign policy front.
I want to pick up on shuttle diplomacy, which both of you slightly mentioned, and that is that the president has made at least 17 trips, I guess still counting, out of the country, both for official and unofficial purposes. He's been to the Netherlands, he's been to India, Germany, Saudi Arabia at least twice or three times. The US, there's also been, trips to Dubai as well. And, he made these trips on the back of a statement that he made on May 29th when he was sworn into office, and that is subsidy is gone. With that, everything else when it came to economic development just went downhill. I mean, cost of living just went up because of just that statement, even though we have to explain later on that it was not, an immediate it was not an immediate policy that was going into effect. But the deed had already been done. Nigerians are today suffering the economic challenges that this has posed. And then you have shuttle diplomacy on the back of this. Was it a realistic move? Let's keep aside the fact that, foreign direct investment was achieved at the end of the day, so says the presidency. But in reality, was this a smart move?
First, the visits of the presidency do not actually qualify to be described as shuttle diplomacy in the classical term of shuttle diplomacy. But that said, yes, he's been out 17 times, both private and unofficial. And when you look at all the visits, they've been either to attend a conference or to pay a visit to, one thing or the other. But look, the all official visits of the president, it's important to start with. And because they lead to, discussions that invariably lead to commitments, that you have mentioned, and possibly more commitments. It's also possible that in some of these discussions, some previous commitments are revived and actualized and things like that. But where we are today in this country is that we need to go beyond commitments. We need some of this foreign investment to begin to come into Nigeria, because it probably will help the country in a number of ways that, But my concern has always been that for us to recognize the nexus between domestic and foreign policy, and that your foreign policy is as good as your domestic policy. And therefore, for some of these commitments to be actualized, we need to do a lot more in the country, particularly on the issues of security. But when you hear investors complaining about capacity or the lack of talent, it shows you again that we need to invest more. We need to work seriously on education. But on the balance, it's just 1 year. We have another 3 years to go. And I'm confident that with the foreign minister we have and the way he's been pushing the agenda that he stated from day one, that, probably in the next 2 years, we'll be able to do a clear, analysis, and then we'll be able to point out specifically that these are the achievements in the last 3 years.
The president in the last 365 days have visited about 12 countries. You mentioned them, some twice, some thrice. But it's important to note that these visits have been for various reasons, such as participating in Paris Summit for the Global Financial Pact, attending the 78th UN General Assembly meeting with world leaders to discuss various issues and sign a couple of agreements. These issues, or these visits are, they've been aimed at strengthening international relations and addressing global challenges. And it's also noteworthy that there has also been high-profile visits to Nigeria. We talked about Secretary Blinken, the Emir of Qatar, as well as the Senegalese president that came, I think about 2 or 3 weeks ago or thereabouts. But the optics looks very good, just like His Excellency alluded. The optics looks very good, But the idea in all of this, I believe, was to try to explain to the world what Nigeria domestic policies is about. To try to explain to them, quite a lot of, we had a lot of issues. You take the issue of Emirates Airline, for example. The reason why they pulled out of Nigeria was as a result of the fact that they've been unable to repatriate their investments, over the years. And that's basically because we've sort of created some kind of artificial support to be able to say that this is the value or this is the, the rates for which a currency can exchange, So, but clearly, the president have taken fundamental reforms in the economy, which is basically what he's trying to sell and explain to the outside world to say, we've addressed this, these are the things we are doing on the domestic front, so that as foreign investors are coming into Nigeria, repatriation of investment is a key factor for any foreign direct investment to come your way. And that's basically what I believe that the president is going out there marketing and selling to the world.
there are fundamental issues we need to bear in mind. Let's make it clear. Let me make this point. When our leaders decide to do something, they should represent that they are not representatives of the elites alone. They are representatives of the whole country. So when they create this hype that Emirates is going to come back to Nigeria, they should also remember that there are some fundamental issues beyond the fact that they left as a result of the fact that they can't get, their money out all the time. And as a matter of fact, that's even one reason why we should be very careful in dealing with this whole issue of Emirates, because if other airlines have decided to take the same action, it will probably be very difficult for Nigeria. There's some other fundamental issues. I think you've raised the issue of visa. There's also the fact that they've refused to grant air peace. So the rights that it's entrenched in the Basa agreement signed between the two countries. So it's not just a question of coming in because you can't take away your money. It's a question of the fact that they too are not prepared to allow allow Air Peace and other Nigerian airlines to work in accordance with the BASA that was signed, just like the British Airways is doing to Air Peace. And we need to take this seriously because, you see, it's when you drive your own benefits, not when you give others every benefit they deserve from you and you get nothing. We signed a BASA agreement with a number of countries, and that if we give you 7 routes or 7 flights into the country, you give us 7. If we give you Lagos, you give us your main airport. Not for us to give you Lagos 7 flights, and then we give you Abuja, another lucrative airport, and then you give us somewhere, miles away. No, that is not acting in the best interest of our country. And I sincerely hope those who are negotiating this to bring Emirates back, they're actually not acting in the best interest of the country, but they are acting in the best interest of the elites.
Nigeria received a lot of flack, after it spoke through ECOWAS, and this was one of the first assignments that President Tinubu had to execute when he came into office. And that was a coup in Niger. Nigeria's position on that drew a lot of attention from ECOWAS members as well as the African Union, even though, both bodies eventually stood behind Nigeria. How would you rate our relations with these two bodies? Ambassador Nyagba, I think I'll start with you.
Yes, we had this, rocky start, but on the balance of things, I think there has been stability since after that. It's not very clear, what ECOWAS wants, how we respond to the issue of pulling out. But I believe that these are political and diplomatic challenges that I believe that we can always resolve through diplomacy. And I'm looking forward to a time where we will take that leadership very firmly within the continent, because some of these countries have gone further than we should, than we have done ourselves. And I believe that we can do a lot better. We can do a lot better in terms of leadership, within the continent. We can do a lot better in terms of engagement. And clearly, the second part of President Tinubu's foreign policy thrust was to get the best deal for the country in any kind of engagement whatsoever. And that also calls, that's where I'm linking to the last issue that Ambassador Keshi talked about, relating to ensuring that Nigeria gets the best deal with our engagement with the likes of Emirates and the United Arab Emirates. I've seen a couple of the agreements. I've seen the some publications regarding the agreement with respect to what needs to happen. Things like saying that the visa ban on Nigeria is going to be lifted, and so on and so forth. But without a doubt, we must be tough in our negotiation, and we must try to ensure that when we engage quite a lot of people, or the population across all demographics will be represented in the nature of our engagement. And I believe very strongly that we're in a position to do that. There is some element of stability within the region. There's also some element of stability within the continent. And I am hoping that we can only get better as we advance in this administration.
Thank you. Ambassador Keshi, if you could quickly make your points.
Yes, thank you. I think what happened over Niger is a lesson. Secondly, we need to adopt what other countries do, particularly the advanced countries. As soon as a presidential candidate is endorsed by its party and it starts campaign, the intelligence agencies begin to share intelligence information with the presidential candidates. Why do they do that? To prepare them in case of emergency.
Thank you both, Ambassador Elijah Onyagba and Ambassador Victor Keshi, for joining us on the program. We appreciate your analysis on the issue. We'll see you again next time. This is where we end the program this week. Let me know your thoughts and comments. You can send them to any of the social media addresses showing on your screen. I'm Amarachi Ubani. I'll see you next time.